The Israeli military says one of its aircraft struck an ambulance in Gaza. The Israeli military says the ambulance was being used by a Hamas unit to move fighters and weapons. The Hamas-run Health Ministry in Gaza said Israel hit a convoy of ambulances that were carrying injured people to the southern part of the territory. CBC's Ellen Morrow is tracking developments for us today from Jerusalem, has more on Blinken's visit and the latest on the fighting inside Gaza.
Well, Andrew, we're starting to see some really gruesome video coming up on news wires from Gaza City earlier this evening from outside of the Al-Shifa hospital that show the aftermath of that strike on an ambulance. And the footage is gruesome. It's hard to look at. You see dozens of injured people, blood on the ground, the scramble to pull the injured into the nearby Al-Shifa hospital. The information that we had initially about this incident was coming from the Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas, but also the Palestinian Red Crescent Society that was posting about this, condemning this Israeli airstrike. It was one of their ambulances that was hit. Coincidentally, I was at the headquarters of the Palestinian Red Crescent Society a few days ago. It's in the occupied West Bank in Ramallah, and there's so much anxiety there. I can only imagine how they're feeling tonight. But as you said, the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, put out that statement saying that the vehicle, that an ambulance, was being used by Hamas operatives to move around, to move weapons, and that's why they say the ambulance was hit. But you can see the aftermath. This was outside of the Al-Shifa hospital. That's the biggest hospital in Gaza City. The IDF, the Israeli military, has said that it's been used by Hamas as an operating base. That's been denied by Hamas and doctors at the hospital. We know that there are civilians inside. There are people there being treated. There's others there who are sheltering there, seeing it as the safest place they can go, although rights groups say there's absolutely no safe place in Gaza. So we're seeing the aftermath of this play out. Again, Andrew, Israel says it's targeting Hamas, but with the strike earlier this week at the Jabalia refugee camp, with the strikes yesterday that damaged UN schools turned shelters, you see the impact of all of this on civilians in Gaza as well.
Ellen, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was back in Israel today. What did he say during this latest visit?
Well, it's clear from what Antony Blinken said that the U.S. wants to see this war playing out differently. Antony Blinken's big message today was that there needs to be humanitarian pauses in this conflict. Now, he reiterated American support for Israel to fight back against Hamas, to defend itself against Hamas after the October 7th attacks. But he also talked about seeing images of Palestinian children on TV being pulled out of the rubble of buildings after Israeli airstrikes, saying that made him think of his own kids. So here's what he said about why humanitarian pauses are needed.
We recognize this would take time to prepare and coordinate as well with international partners. A number of legitimate questions were raised in our discussions today, including how to use any period of pause to maximize the flow of humanitarian assistance, how to connect a pause to the release of hostages, how to ensure that Hamas doesn't use these pauses or arrangements to its own advantage.
So Blinken said these pauses would be crucial. Blinken says these pauses would be crucial, Andrew, for a few things. One, to get aid into Gaza that desperately needed humanitarian aid. Another, to help minimize civilian casualties. And another purpose to be trying to get out those more than 200 hostages who are being held by Hamas in Gaza. But as he was finishing his comments, again, calling for those pauses, Benjamin Netanyahu was on TV here in Israel giving a televised speech of his own, saying that Israel will not have any pause to this fighting until those hostages are freed.
CBC's Ellen Morrow in Jerusalem, and she was speaking a little bit earlier with Andrew.